Well, welcome back to our podcast. I'm Don Gertz, and I'm here with my friend Greg DeMarco. And we talk about things all about sales. So if you ever had any questions about something about sales, conversations, how to carry on a conversation, that's kind of where we focus because we just think that sales is a process of a series of conversations. Isn't that right, Greg?
I agree with you 100% there, Don.
Yeah.
It is a series of conversations.
And that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about communication because having a good conversation depends on how well you can communicate. So in today's session, we want to bring out what we think are three keys to having good communication. And there may be more, but these are the three that we're going to focus on. We're going to focus on listening skills. We're going to focus on understanding and empathizing, and we're going to focus on asking good questions. So let's cover that first point, Greg. Listening. To be a good communicator, you need to be an active listener. How does a person become an active listener?
Well, it's been my experience, and I've written a lot of things on this, and I've done a lot of coaching and mentoring on it. But the main thing about listening, what I find the most appropriate thing is about being a good listener is that you have to start with the intention to want to understand somebody. And that's what it takes to get into a good conversation. You have to put yourself always in the shoes of someone else, and it helps you to understand their position. But you can't just think that way. You have to actually mentally and visually put yourself there. The main thing about listening is that you have to take a genuine interest in someone to really want to understand them and to listen to their story. Because that's all really what people want from you, is they want to know that they're heard, and they want to know that you care enough about them to know what they're all about. So that, for me, is very critical. One of the biggest things that has helped me in my career over the years is really understanding where other people are sitting at the table. That's important.
I think when when you're actively listening to somebody, you're actually hearing what they're saying. You're not thinking about what your response is going to be right away.
That's right.
Right. So we can ask a question, and then we can automatically think, okay, what's the next question I want to ask? But we're going to talk about asking questions later. But the important thing, I think, is I think it starts off right from the very beginning when you get introduced to somebody. How do you remember their name?
Mm-hmm.
I get introduced to somebody 3 seconds later, I forgot their name.
Yep.
So I have to remember that that's a problem that I have. So when I get introduced to somebody, I consciously think of who I'm being introduced to and what their name is. Particularly if you're having a conversation with them, going to be an ongoing conversation. You don't want to be introduced to them and then 3 seconds later, or not 3 seconds, but 3 minutes later, forget their name. And
I know it usually happens where as soon as they tell you, you forget their name.
Yeah, that's right. But that's part of active listening, right? Is hearing what the person is saying.
Well, one of the tricks you can use is like what I do, because I'm exactly that way. I'm the worst person for that. What I do is as soon as they say their name, I usually repeat it back to them. Don. Yeah, that's right. When you do that, it kind of anchors it in your head a little bit better.
Well, it's funny. I met a guy a couple of weeks ago, and then I met him again yesterday, and he said, "You're Don, right?" And I said, "Shoot,
yes, I am.
I am, but I don't remember you."
And you are.
But I remember, and then he told me his name, and I said, "Oh yeah, I remember meeting you." I mean, I remembered meeting him. That wasn't the problem. I can remember faces. It's just when you're meeting, and the context that I met him in was at church, and it was like when you're meeting people at church, sometimes you're meeting lots of people at the same time, right? So, or any other networking function. But I remember saying to myself, okay, his name is the same as my middle name, so it's like I really forgot my own name. So anyway. And it all worked out. He was okay with it. But hadn't seen him for a couple of weeks, and then know this guy. I met him before. What's his name? but
Yeah.
that's not a good thing. I'm not saying that we should be like that. We got to figure out how to be active listeners so that we actively listen, and we can remember their name.
Well, there's one of the things that I've worked on in a workshop is what we call active listening practice, where if you really feel the need to improve your listening skills, you can get a friend or a partner and start talking and have a conversation, and you set kind of like a timer, 5 minutes or whatever it is, and your goal is to actively listen to the other one, and then you in turn interpret and offer your own opinion to the conversation. So the whole goal is to listen to what they have to say, give feedback, and sort of practice that back and forth. And that has a lot of, good success to it.
So we should be practicing our active listening. We shouldn't just be thinking going into the conversation that we should be an active listener. We should practice it.
I think that people have to look at their skill set and say to themselves, bravely, I am not a good listener. If you're saying that about yourself, then you need to practice. But some people just need to understand what it takes to be a good listener. But in the end, I think, Don, really what the clincher here is, you have to want to understand where other people are at and genuinely want to get to know what they're saying and why they're saying it. And you have to be an active listener to be able to do that. And it's easier for some people than it is others.
That really leads us into our second part there, which is understanding and empathizing, empathy, for people. And I think that's, really what you're saying, because if we don't understand where the person's coming from, and empathize with them, we don't really care, or we're not really going to care about what they're saying.
Yeah.
And if we don't care about what they're saying, we can drift off into our own, I think one of the issues that we sometimes have is that our brain can think a lot faster than either one of us can talk. So
Yeah.
I could be talking and you could be listening to me, but you're thinking about something else because your brain is going someplace. I mean, maybe I'm the only person that does that, but I think if you're not careful, you let your brain take over and you're thinking about something and you're not really listening to what that person is saying. And that's going to affect how good of an active listener you are. But it's also going to not help you understand the person and what their problem is. Because in sales, that's what we're trying to do, is we're trying to uncover what their problem is and how can our services or product help them overcome that and solve their problem.
Yeah. I mean, it's all really about that listening part, and then, getting into a conversation with them. And that's the problem that most people have is they're intent on basically responding or reacting. They want to give an answer, and they're not listening to what the other person is saying. So that doesn't make for good communication, right?
No, you don't want to be having a conversation with somebody and then have your brain go off someplace else. And then when they come back, they ask you a question and you didn't hear what the question was.
Yeah, no, it's funny. That's what happened to me and my sister the other day. She started talking to me. I wasn't listening. And then she starts laughing and go, I asked you 2 questions. And I said, oh, I wasn't listening.
Okay.
Sorry, I shut you out.
It's one thing for that to happen with your sister. It's another thing if it happens to your wife, and it happens with my wife and myself a lot.
No, I get it. Trust me.
Yeah. So
but that's just it, though. This is what, it's funny. We can make a joke about it, but what's kind of the thing is when you're with somebody else, especially if you're in sales, I mean, you can't go into it with the intention that I'm going to sell something. And because all you're thinking about is what you're going to tell them, which may not be relevant to what they want to know.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. We go in and we think, okay, this is my product. This is what I have, this is how I want to present it, and blah, 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 blah. And we have this script in our head that's going around. But really, if we're not listening to what they're saying, I know in real estate, you can easily do that. You think, okay, I want to go in and I want to show somebody, okay, this is my plan. This is how I'm going to sell your house. we're going to prepare the house. We're going to take pictures, blah, 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 blah. And it all goes down the line. Say, this is the plan. But if I haven't listened to what they're saying. What's their motivation? Because when we're
Mhm.
actively listening, when we understand what they're saying to us, they will let us know what their motivation is. They may not, directly say, okay, I'm motivated because this, but in the conversation, you can discern when you're actively listening and you're understanding and empathizing with their position. We're better able to discern what their true motivation is.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's right. But that's what it comes down to, is that's what listening, active listening, does for you. It gives you certain cues about the person across the table. You start to get to know them. What's their motivation? What inspires them? What are they desiring? What are their needs? There's all these things that come into play, and all those things are very important in how you can serve them, right?
Yeah. It's all about serving the other person.
Yeah, and I often talk about what I call conversational awareness. And that's what it is. It's just getting to know somebody so that you can actually serve them the best way that you possibly can.
Conversational awareness. That's a good term. I like that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I talk about that quite a bit, because I think what happens is salespeople have a tendency to psych themselves out, or be nervous, or have some issues when they start first initially talking with somebody, because they think they have to serve this agenda, that it's got to be very strict, and this is what you got to say, and you've got to respond to this and that. What it is really conversational awareness is really about getting to know somebody and building a connection and rapport so that you can serve them. Trust me, when you start to get to know somebody and they see that you care about them because they're being heard by you, there isn't anything you can't provide to them, because you've just established trust, you've established likability, and you have credibility.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. Well, that kind of building credibility also, we do that by asking good questions. And that
That's
would
right.
and that would be our third point, where we need to understand that asking good questions is not for our benefit so much, but it's for their benefit. Because if we can, sometimes if we're a good interviewer, if we ask the right questions, we help them have a better understanding of where they're at and where they want to be as well.
Yeah. Yeah, agreed. I think, see, asking questions is really the precursor to being able to really understand somebody. The more intelligent questions you can ask, the more the conversation is going to go in everybody's favor, not just yours, not just theirs. They're going to feel appreciated and like you care. You're going to feel great because you're starting to learn something that you can now see what they need, and how can your product or your service best serve them.
There's I think it was in 1955. There was, or in the early 50s anyway, there was two psychologists. One, I forget what their names were, but they created this model called the Johari window. And it's an interesting idea. And what the Johari window does is it helps people understand that we have four windows that we have when we're communicating with people. So we have the right now we have this window that you and I are talking in, and that would be called the arena. So this is where we can do business. This is where we can have conversations. This is what leads to everything else. And then there's other windows that they have, where we have blind spots. So there's that window there where I have blind spots, and you can maybe see them, but being the nice guy that you are, you clearly don't want to point them out to me because.
No, I like pointing them out to you.
But just all joking aside, but we all have different blind spots about the way
Yeah.
that we are, and we don't see them. But when we get feedback from our clients, maybe we have a tendency to talk over people, or maybe we're not listening to them, and maybe that's something that's a blind spot to us. We haven't heard that from enough people to know. So as we get feedback from people, our blind spots go away. And then as we develop our conversations with people, we get into an area of trust. So our feedback and our conversations develop more trust. So there's things about me that you don't know, and I don't necessarily know that I want you to know them yet, right?
Yeah,
So, but as our relationships grows and builds, then we develop trust, and I maybe going to reveal a few more of
that's right.
those things to you. So as we develop more trust and know each other better, and as our blind spots, and you have blind spots too, by the way,
Yes, I
and
know.
as our blind spots, diminish, or as we become more aware of our blind spots, our arena, the window of our opportunity, becomes bigger. So,
Yep,
so in sales, your opportunity to do business with somebody increases as you take in feedback from them and develop more trust with them. And that's part of the being a good communicator. Is, I think, that whole idea of developing a more trust and a better understanding of who you're working with, and who your client is. And I think that by asking good questions is the way that we want to do that.
yeah, yeah. I agree with you 100%. I think that that goes a long way to establishing good rapport, good trust. That's the goal, anyways. If you want to get to know somebody, you have to have that conversation. But you have that conversation by asking appropriate and intelligent questions that are
And
going to probe them, right?
yeah, and the questions can't be like an interrogation either. Right.
That depends on the personality type, though.
Well, yeah. Like, I ask a lot of questions, when I go someplace, and
Yeah,
I know I was on a trip to Africa one time, and we were in a car. There was four of us in the vehicle, and we had just landed, of course, and my eyes are wide open. I'm looking at everything, like, wow, I'm in Africa. And we're driving down the road, and I was with my cousin and two other guys. And one of the other guys said to my cousin after, I didn't, without me knowing, he says, "Does that guy always ask so many questions? Like, come on." You
what are you, a cop?
yeah. But the point is that you can ask too many questions and become irritating. So asking questions is important, but practice asking the questions. Know what kind of questions you're going to ask, and know your own personality. Like, know your own style, because I know what my personality style is, and I like to know things. I'm curious, so I want to find out, but I need to ask the questions in such a way that I don't drive somebody crazy.
Yeah. No, well, it's important to ask questions, but I think you know, you're right. You have to ask intelligent questions that are going to find out about what they really desire and what they want. Don't get into some other. We talked about this in that other episodes. You have to be careful what you're asking. But the most important thing is that they get the impression that they're being heard.
Yeah,
You
being
want
heard.
them to have
Yeah,
a feeling. They want to come out of there with a feeling that they've been heard and
that you cared
generally
about them.
that they like you. Yeah,
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 that's it.
yeah. That's great.
Exactly it. So
So we covered the three keys of better communication, or three of the keys. There's probably more, but so that's developing better active listening skills, having a better understanding and empathy for the person you're talking to, and asking good questions. But remembering that the questions aren't for your benefit; they're to help your client, or the person that you're with, to understand better their circumstances.
exactly.
That would be it.
Yeah. No,
Anything,
that's good.
anything else you'd like to add to our conversation today, Greg?
Well, I think I just end it with, listen, I mean, going to talk to people is a skill, but it doesn't have to be a torture either. Just ask questions. If you ever get stumped, one sales manager of mine always said to me, Greg, if you ever get, caught up in something, or you don't know, you're nervous or something happens, just ask a question. And by asking a question, you're putting the onus on them, but it's not just putting the onus on somebody, it's actually getting to know them, because they start to feel that sense of, okay, they care enough that they're asking me questions. And that's really all it is. You have to remember that it's just a conversation. That's all you're having. But go into it with the intent of understanding who they are. And I guarantee you, if you do that, you'll come out of it with a much, much better understanding of who they are. You'll probably get a deal out of it, and everybody will be happy.
Yeah, it reminds me of a long time ago. I took the Dale Carnegie course.
Oh yeah.
Maybe I don't even know if people remember who or know who Dale
Oh yeah.
Carnegie was, but he
Yeah.
was he was one of the first guys in that helping people communicate, and he wrote a book how to win friends and influence people.
Influence people. Yeah.
And part of the course they talk about having conversations, and sometimes people don't know what to talk about. So they say, okay, you got to have this picture in your mind, and I might not get this exactly right, but they you have to have a picture of in your mind and think of a house, because everybody wants to talk about everybody. You can talk about with people where they're from. So you're from Ontario, I'm from British Columbia. We can talk about, well, what's the weather like in Ontario today, Greg?
Yep.
It starts the conversation off. You talk about, well, where do you live? That type of thing. And then you got to imagine that in the window you see a family. You see little kids, and you see a mom and a dad and whatever through the window of this house. So
Yep.
you could say, when I see that picture, then I know I can talk about their relationships. I can talk about their family. I can talk
That's
about
right.
their kids. So these are questions that you can ask. And then they have, on the roof, there's a chimney. And in the chimney, you can always talk about, I don't know, you can always talk about what a person does as well. Like what
Yep.
do they do for work? That has nothing to do with the chimney. I just kind of thought, okay, I'm getting the sequence out here. It's been a long time, right? So
Yeah.
anyway, so in the chimney is this big tennis racket, and this big, huge, giant tennis racket. And so that's going to remind you that you talk about what are their hobbies? What do you like
Yeah.
to do in your spare time? And then and then think about, in that tennis racket, there's an airplane stuck in the webbing of the tennis racket. And when you think about the airplane stuck in the webbing of the tennis racket, you think, okay, have you traveled anywhere lately? Where have you been? What did you do this summer? Like summertime, a lot of people travel. But those are different things that you can think about and say, okay, how am I going? Because not everybody is a great conversationalist or wants to get out and meet people. So sometimes we need a little bit of help. And I think that just remembering that there's that different
Yeah.
model of the house, the family, what do they do for work?
Yeah. Yeah. It's a great way to get to know somebody.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's different models of that, but that's just how we start to understand who people are and where they're coming from. Right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Anyway, I want to thank you, Greg, for your time today,
yeah,
and we look
appreciate
forward
it.
to the next time. And hey, make some comments if you like, and ask us questions. And if we know the answer, we'll try. If we don't know the answer, we'll try anyway. But
Well, I appreciate it.
so you have a good day.
Thanks,
Thank you
Don.
very much.